Good morning, everybody. It's Emily Wilmoth, environmental educator with New Jersey Audubon, once again coming at you live from the Cape May Hawkwatch. Before we get started, as always, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Swarovski Optic and Actions at EBMF, for their continued support of the Hawkwatch. So you can see it's been a foggy, kind of dreary morning, but we had an exciting milestone. We hit number 25,000 for raptors migrating through Cape May this fall. That's incredible because we had just over 25,000 in the entire season last year. So we're well on track to sort of blow that total out of the water. So it's been just a fantastic season overall at the Cape May Hawkwatch. Our topic today is kind of rare, unusual, uncommon avian visitors to the Hawkwatch. So I'm going to share sort of my favorites, and then Eric's going to share his as well. So if you're not familiar with my personal history with the Hawkwatch, I was a naturalist up here way back in 2013 and 2014. And I believe it was 2014. It was a really, really exciting raptor that showed up in Cape May called a zone-tailed hawk. And we were in a way sort of expecting it because it had been observed like further north along the East Coast. And this is a bird whose range is like the southwestern United States. So we were kind of thinking if it somehow got, north of us, potentially as it headed back home, it would come through Cape May. And sure enough, it did. And this bird, it looks a lot like a turkey vulture, and they often actually hang out with turkey vultures. But what really makes them stand out from the turkey vultures is they have this beautiful banded tail. But they'll often fly around with the vultures, and this could be a benefit for them while they're hunting, because as you might be aware, turkey vultures like to eat things that are already dead. Zone-tailed hawks, not so much. They like to actually catch living prey. So maybe by hanging out with these vultures, they're sort of a predator, in disguise with these birds that only eat dead things. So that was probably my favorite rare raptor that showed up here at the Hawkwatch. Sometimes like weather events are what bring us really rare birds, right? Like a big storm pushes birds off course. But that didn't really seem to be the case with that one. Maybe just its internal compass was a little bit mixed up. It actually ended up coming back again the following year, which we're assuming was the same individual that was just, an explorer or a confused bird, but super cool to see nonetheless. My favorite non-raptor rare bird sighting at the Hawkwatch, I believe, was that same year, 2014. There were a couple actually black terns around, which are really cool birds to see here in Cape May. So one morning we saw what we at first just assumed was a black tern out flying over the pond here, but upon closer inspection, folks started to realize, oh my gosh, it's actually a whiskered tern. Now, whiskered terns are native to Europe. They migrate between Europe and Africa. So this bird somehow got here from a completely different continent. Again, there was no like major weather system or anything at that time, that potentially blew it off course. It just must have, gotten mixed up and ended up somehow here in New Jersey. There was only like 2 or 3 other whiskered tern sightings in North America ever when this happened, and believe it or not, all of them were here in Cape May. So this raises the question, is Cape May just a magnet for rarities, based on sort of its location and geography? Or is it the fact that there's so many talented birders out here throughout the year, looking for and identifying these birds? And if you ask me, it's probably a combination of both of those things together that really make it such a special place. So I'm going to hand it over to Eric now. And Eric, can you share with us, sort of your most memorable, uncommon raptor and non-raptor sightings at the Hawkwatch?
Yes, Emily, and good morning to all of you too. I was a hawk counter here 2016, 2017, in 2018. And because of spending so much fun time up here as a hawk counter, it makes this exact question very, very challenging to answer. In regards to raptors flying by, one of the big highlight days for me actually several years ago was having not just one but two rough-legged hawks flying by in a single day. And rough-legged hawks are a personal favorite of mine. They have beautiful fluffy underbellies, very fluffy legs. They are built for the Arctic tundra, which is where they come from. Their neighbors back in their stomping grounds where they breed are going to be like gyrfalcons and snowy owls. It's a vast landscape up there where they come from. And here in Cape May, over recent generations of counters, our numbers are showing that they're becoming less and less common during the fall time. Not necessarily during the winter time after the count is concluded, but during the fall migration we're seeing fewer and fewer, and they become less than annual currently. And to see one over the course of a season like we had about a week ago is a big treat, but to see two of them in one day is also a very, very special treat. And in particular, the first rough-legged hawk of that two rough-legged hawk day was a dark morph, and it was seen flying low past the lighthouse. So I got to see it fly within view of the classic Cape May lighthouse, and it was such a treat. Oh, it's behind the pine trees.
There you go.
So I'm kind of a sucker for all the bootios that migrate through here, and rough-legged hawks again are just near and dear to my heart. From a non-raptor standpoint, there's also been a lot of treats that I've been very blessed to have seen fly by over the years, and I think finding my lifer gray kingbird was definitely a personal top highlight. I had never seen one before. It was 2 years ago, almost to the exact day actually, during the fall festival. And Richard Crossley was leading a group on the dune crossing over there. Big group of people having tons of fun, with Richard in charge, of course. And I'm scanning around and I see this kingbird fly by. Thick beak, kind of light buttery cast below. Tail's a little different than the eastern kingbird without the white band in the tail. And I'm looking at it like, oh, this is a gray kingbird. So I'm like, gray kingbird. And Richard's like, oh, bloody, oh, so exciting. And he's got his amazing accent going. Everyone's getting thrilled. It was a brief sighting for the group, unfortunately, but it actually circled briefly over the Hawkwatch and continued, and got to see it with the morning light and all. It was a really magical experience to see a lifer up here as it migrated through. They're more common throughout like Cuba and the tropical areas of the Americas, not normally found here in Cape May.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Eric. You mentioned we did see a rough-legged hawk this season here at the Hawkwatch. Are there any other rare, uncommon, or maybe just like unusual numbers of other birds we've seen this season that you'd like to share?
Yeah, we're having a really good season, like you described overall, Emily. Our sharp-shinned hawk numbers are doing pretty well. We've also had a Mississippi kite earlier in the season, and Mississippi kites in particular are a pretty rare bird. They're expanding north, but we did have a Mississippi kite earlier in the season. And just backtracking for a moment, our Cooper's hawk numbers are also quite prevalent this season too. So yeah, lots of accipiters are coming through this fall.
Awesome. So we're going to switch back again here.
Oh.
And time to reveal the raptor of the week. And actually this week, it's two raptors that are really closely related. The sharp-shinned hawk and the Cooper's hawk. So our topic was sort of rare and uncommon birds at the Hawkwatch this week. These are not examples of those birds. In fact, the sharp-shinned hawk is typically the most common raptor that we'll see come through Cape May each season. In fact, it was a sharp-shinned hawk this morning that was number 25,000 on the season here. So both sharp-shinned hawks and Cooper's hawks are in a category of raptors called accipiters. And so they're woodland hawks, and they're designed for really maneuvering through the forest to catch their prey, often songbirds. So they've got these short rounded wings, as you can see, and then relatively long tails for their body size. And those tails really act as like rudders to help them maneuver through the forest. So these two birds can be very, very challenging to tell apart. But there are some tips and tricks that you can use. So overall, sharp-shinned hawks are smaller than Cooper's hawks, but size can be really deceiving, especially if you're only seeing one of them at a time, you know, not the two of them right next to each other. But because sharp-shinned hawks are smaller than Cooper's hawks, they tend to flap their wings a little more frequently and a little bit quicker than the Cooper's hawks. So both of these birds do a flap, 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 glide, flap, 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 glide type of flight style. But again, the Coops will tend to flap a little bit quicker, a little more frequently. The Sharpies will tend to flap a little quicker, a little more frequently than the Cooper's hawks. That's one thing to look for. Again, probably a size difference characteristic is if they are soaring like up high in the thermals. Sharp-shinned hawks, their circles as they're, you know, kind of swirling around tend to be tighter circles than the Cooper's hawk. So those are sort of flight style differences. Shape differences to look for. Cooper's hawks, their heads tend to project a little bit further out from the leading edges of the wings. So their heads look bigger. Oftentimes the sharp-shinned hawk head gets kind of lost within the leading edges of the wings. Looking at tail shape, these cutouts do a really good job at, you know, emphasizing that the Cooper's hawk tends to have a rounded tip to the tail, while the sharp-shinned hawk has a more squared off tip to the tail. So those are just a few of the tips and tricks you can use to kind of tell these two apart. But again, it's not easy. And even the best of the best will get it wrong sometimes, and that's okay. You know, it's all about repetition. And for me, at least, sometimes one will go by and immediately I'm like, definitely sharp-shinned hawk or definitely Cooper's hawk. And then there's other birds where I'm watching them for 30 seconds and I'm like, I know it's an accipiter, it's one of these, but I just can't figure it out. So, you know, it's all about practice and patience, and just having all those tools to kind of pull out from your pocket, and hopefully one of those clues will click and help you to identify sharp-shinned or Cooper's hawk. Both of these birds in these cutouts are immature birds. They have this sort of like teardrop vertical streaking along the breast. The adult birds will instead have a thin horizontal barring. So that's one way you can tell adult versus immature. So again, these are common birds we see, but we love every single one. We never get tired of them. And we've already seen several today, and I'm sure we'll continue to see more as the day and the season goes on. Sharp-shinned hawk and Cooper's hawk, hawks of the week. So thanks for tuning in today. We've got one more week of live streaming from the Hawkwatch. It's going to be the Friday before Halloween, right? So we're thinking the topic's going to be something nocturnal. So be sure to tune in for that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment box and we will do our best to respond. Thanks everybody. Have a great day.